The year 1913 dawned with a sense of both progress and unease. The world was on the cusp of great change, though few could have predicted the tumultuous decade ahead. From Washington to Europe, the seeds of change were being sown. In the United States, a reformist spirit was challenging established norms. Meanwhile, Europe was a powder keg of tensions, setting the stage for conflict. Henry Ford's moving assembly line revolutionized industrial production. From the Midwest flood to the Los Angeles Aqueduct's completion, the year showcased both destruction and ingenuity. Join us as we delve into the key events of 1913 and their lasting legacy. For decades, the U.S. Senate, often dubbed the Millionaires' Club, was seen as a bastion of privilege. This changed on May 31, 1913, with the ratification of the 17th Amendment. The amendment mandated the direct election of senators by popular vote. Progressives and reformers fought for this change, arguing it would make the Senate more accountable and less corrupt. Its passage marked a significant victory for democratic principles and a more responsive government. It fundamentally altered the relationship between citizens and their elected officials. The 17th Amendment stands as a testament to grassroots activism and American democracy. While the United States grappled with its own political and social reforms, a revolution raged just south of its border. Mexico, in the throes of a bloody civil war, presented a foreign policy challenge for the newly inaugurated President Woodrow Wilson. In February 1913, a coup d'état led by General Victoriano Huerta overthrew and resulted in the death of President Francisco Madero, plunging Mexico deeper into chaos. Wilson, a staunch idealist, refused to recognize Huerta's regime, which he viewed as illegitimate and brutal. Instead, he adopted a policy of watchful waiting, hoping that Huerta would be ousted and a democratic government would emerge. This policy, however, proved difficult to maintain, as the situation in Mexico deteriorated. The U.S. found itself increasingly drawn into the conflict, with American interests in Mexico threatened by the ongoing violence. In April 1914, the arrest of American sailors in Tampico, Mexico, sparked a diplomatic crisis. Wilson, with congressional approval, ordered the U.S. Navy to seize the port of Veracruz. The U.S. occupation of Veracruz, though short-lived, further inflamed anti-American sentiment in Mexico and demonstrated the complexities of U.S.-Mexican relations. One of the most significant domestic achievements of the Wilson administration came in the realm of economic policy. For decades, the United States had operated under a system of high protective tariffs, taxes levied on imported goods to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. These tariffs, however, had also driven up prices for consumers and stifled international trade. Wilson, a believer in free trade, made tariff reform a central plank of his economic agenda. On October 3, 1913, he signed into law the Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act, which significantly reduced tariff rates for the first time in nearly 2 decades. The act aimed to lower the cost of living for ordinary Americans and promote competition in the marketplace. To offset the loss of revenue from lower tariffs, the Underwood-Simmons Act also introduced a federal income tax, made possible by the recent ratification of the 16th Amendment. The Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act marked a significant shift in American economic policy, moving away from protectionism and toward a more open and competitive marketplace. Since the Panic of 1907, a severe financial crisis that exposed the weaknesses of the American banking system, there had been growing calls for reform. The existing system, characterized by a decentralized network of banks and a lack of a central monetary authority, was ill-equipped to handle financial shocks and provide stability to the economy. To address these shortcomings, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, which President Wilson signed into law on December 23, 1913. This landmark legislation created the Federal Reserve System, a central banking system designed to provide a more stable and flexible financial system for the United States. The Federal Reserve Act divided the country into 12 Federal Reserve districts, each with its own Federal Reserve Bank. These regional banks would serve as bankers' banks, providing loans and other financial services to member banks within their districts. Overseeing the entire system was the Federal Reserve Board, a newly created body appointed by the President. The establishment of the Federal Reserve System marked a turning point in American financial history. The Federal Reserve would go on to play a pivotal role in shaping the American economy throughout the 20th century and beyond. While the United States focused on domestic reforms, Europe stood on the brink of a cataclysm. The First Balkan War, which had erupted in 1912 between the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan League, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, continued to rage, further destabilizing an already volatile region. The conflict, rooted in ethnic and nationalist tensions, had far-reaching implications for the balance of power in Europe. In May 1913, Greece captured the strategically important island of Chios from the Ottoman Empire, marking a turning point in the war. The Balkan League's victories came at a heavy cost, with widespread casualties and destruction. The Treaty of London, signed at the end of May, officially ended the war, but it did little to address the underlying tensions that had fueled the conflict. The First Balkan War had a profound impact on the geopolitical landscape of Europe. It weakened the Ottoman Empire, already in decline, and emboldened nationalist movements in the Balkans. Within a year, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo, Bosnia, would plunge Europe into the deadliest war the world had ever seen. Far from the battlefields of Europe, another struggle for freedom was unfolding in South Africa. Mohandas Gandhi, a young Indian lawyer, had been living in South Africa for over 2 decades, fighting for the rights of his fellow Indians who faced discrimination and oppression under the apartheid regime. Gandhi, a believer in non-violent resistance, had developed a philosophy of satyagraha, which emphasized truth, love, and passive resistance as tools for social change. In 1913, he launched a campaign against a new law that required all Indians to register with the government and carry passes. Gandhi's campaign involved leading peaceful protests, organizing strikes, and encouraging Indians to court arrest by defying the unjust laws. On November 6, 1913, Gandhi himself was arrested while leading a march of Indian miners from Natal to the Transvaal. Gandhi's arrest and imprisonment galvanized the Indian community in South Africa and drew international attention to their plight. Gandhi's experiences in South Africa would shape his philosophy and his leadership in the Indian independence movement, which he would lead to victory decades later. In Russia, the year 1913 marked a momentous occasion, the 300th anniversary of the Romanov dynasty's reign. The House of Romanov, founded by Tsar Michael I in 1613, had ruled Russia for 3 centuries, presiding over a vast empire that stretched from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean. To commemorate this milestone, Tsar Nicholas II and his family participated in lavish celebrations throughout the year. Grand balls, military parades, and religious ceremonies were held across the country, showcasing the splendor and power of the Romanov dynasty. The celebrations, however, masked deep social, economic, and political problems that were brewing beneath the surface. Russia in 1913 was a land of stark contrasts. While the aristocracy lived in opulence, the vast majority of the population, particularly the peasantry, endured poverty, illiteracy, and lack of political representation. Within 5 years, the Tsar and his family would be murdered by Bolshevik revolutionaries, bringing an end to the Romanov dynasty and ushering in a new era of communist rule in Russia. The year 1913, a year of celebration for the Romanovs, would be remembered as the twilight of their reign. In the realm of technology and industry, the year 1913 witnessed a revolution that would transform the world: the introduction of Henry Ford's moving assembly line. Ford, a visionary industrialist, had been experimenting with new ways to improve efficiency in automobile manufacturing. His goal was to produce cars on a massive scale, making them affordable for the average person. Ford's breakthrough came at his Highland Park factory in Michigan, where he implemented a system of moving conveyors that carried partially assembled cars past stationary workers. Each worker was assigned a specific task, such as attaching a wheel or installing a door, which they repeated as the cars moved down the line. This division of labor and continuous flow of production dramatically reduced the time and cost of assembling a car. The impact of Ford's moving assembly line was nothing short of revolutionary. The Model T, Ford's iconic automobile, became a symbol of the new era of mass production and affordable transportation. Ford's innovations not only transformed the automobile industry, but also had a profound impact on manufacturing processes across a wide range of industries.